addressing the implementation of electric mobility solutions in the U.S. Please welcome the Director of Argonne's Energy Systems Division, Don Hillebrand.
Thank you. Well, after all this discussions of startups and new technologies, I feel going back to just old-fashioned research is sort of like talking about horses and ox carts. So what I want to do is, while we're waiting for that to come up, we also need some startups related to interoperability of presentations and possibly cell phone muting at the same time. I think that might be two areas where we can work. What I want to talk about. I work for the Department of Energy. It's one of the major arms in the United States that's really funding a lot of the fundamental research related to electric vehicles. So we're going to transition a little bit to talk about some of the electric technologies. We're tasked in my group in particular, to essentially go around the world, find the best, the cutting edge technologies, partner with them, and make sure that the U.S. is involved in whatever fundamental breakthroughs are coming as we go forward. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our research. I'm going to outline what the Department of Energy's mission is in the electric vehicle space, and a quick snapshot of our funding. And I want to talk about 3 or 4 of the initiatives that we have going. And I'm going to accelerate it a little bit because I know we're a little bit behind schedule. But I'll talk about some of the initiatives we have going right now. Some of them have been really well covered, so I'm going to breeze over them, in particular connected and automated vehicles. But I want to highlight just some of the areas that the Department of Energy is working on right now. Before I start, let's talk about the Jevons Principle. And this is our enemy. This is like entropy, or the second law of thermodynamics when it comes to efficiency. Jevons paradox, the proposition that technological progress that increases resource use efficiency tends to increase the rate of consumption of that resource. And that's something that we're going to be fighting against, really, with all of these technologies that we talk about. As we make things more efficient, we will unfortunately affect human behavior, and human behavior will inevitably work towards trying to consume more of that resource. But I'll start out with a chart that we used to show every time we were going to discuss our research, going back to about 2003. And this is the oil use chart balance within the United States. You look at this, this was something that was, I said, unsettling when I gave a talk in 2006. This was terrifying to us in the U.S. Our oil consumption and our oil production were so out of whack and so out of balance that we saw a cataclysm coming. We're very concerned about it. And I put this chart up there a little bit to kind of breathe a little bit of optimism into this. We focused on this issue for the last several years, actually 10 years. And it's changed dramatically. This is the forecast of U.S. oil production, and this is just a little piece of the issue. You can see that right now, our oil production in the U.S. is going to spike. It's going to increase greatly. Our efficiency levels are up substantially. And unfortunately, our economy had a little bit of a downturn a few years ago, so our use of energy for transportation turned down as well. So all those things coupled together have done a lot to greatly decrease the need that the U.S. has to import oil and petroleum. So that's great. Problem solved, right? Well, no, it's not. What that's done for us, if you look at the oil markets right now, is really the balance of oil production, oil use hasn't changed. The U.S. still produces about 15% of the global oil. OPEC still produces 38, 39%. What we bought with our newfound oil and our efficiency and all those things is we bought a breathing space. And how we use that breathing space is extremely important. And that's really where we're trying to sit right now with Department of Energy's research goals. Use that breathing space to improve efficiency to the point that petroleum hopefully doesn't matter in the future. The U.S. administration's goal, for a long time it was said the U.S. didn't even have an energy policy. We always have. It's better stated right now, I think, than it's ever been before, but let me go through the 5 formats of that. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 17% by 2020, 28% by 2025, and 83% by 2050 from the 2005 baseline. By 2035, we're to generate 80% of our electricity from a diverse set of clean energy resources. Double our energy productivity by 2030, reduce net oil imports by half by 2020, and we're on track to do that, and reduce CO2 emissions by 3 billion metric tons cumulatively by 2030. Those are the objectives that the administration is working toward, and at Department of Energy, that's really shapes the research that we're trying to do. So I want to talk about some of that research. Now, the group that funds my lab, and I'll give you a short commercial on my lab in just a minute, is the Sustainable Transportation Group at the Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy area of Department of Energy. So 3 broad groups that we're working on to really address that energy imbalance, that problem that we have. The first is the Vehicle Technologies Office. The second is the Hydrogen Office, and the third is the Fuel Cell Technologies Office. I'm sorry, Vehicle Technologies, Bioenergy, and Fuel Cell Technologies. It's those 3 groups together that are addressing these different technologies, and I want to just quickly talk about what does the funding look in those three areas. And we've talked about a lot of investment, but this is fundamental research, investment that happens year after year, and how this is shaped really helps direct the changes that are being made. Most important thing, top line, FY16, the fiscal year 16, there's almost a request for $440 million in research in batteries. So as we talk about a lot of these battery breakthroughs and things that are happening, a lot of this really traces back to funding that's coming specifically through these programs. Vehicle systems, another $70 million. Advanced combustion engines, materials technology, fuels and lubricants. You can do the math yourself. You see, there are literally $700 million that are going into research for this year by year. That's a pretty strong driving force, and that's really what directs our lab and really what directs us to come here and find some of the best in the world for partnering. Now, what's really the objective of this funding? What are they trying to do? Essentially, it's decrease petroleum dependency and reduce greenhouse gases. I mean, that's simply stated. We can go through all the other things we're trying to do, but that's really what the objective of that $700 million in funding is for, to figure out ways to accomplish those 2 tasks. So that's really what we're directing towards. We'll give you a short commercial in my lab, and then we'll talk about some initiatives and where they stand right now, and how that fits into what's happening in general with electric propulsion. Argonne National Lab, based near Chicago. 3,000 people work there. About 1,000 of us are PhDs. We're focused on a wide range of research. Hard X-ray sciences, discovery science for energy, leadership computing, fundamental physics, material systems, all fundamental type stuff. But really some exciting areas that relate to what we're doing right here are the 2 areas that I'm related to, and that is energy storage research and sustainable transportation. It's the lower left-hand corner view. Those are the areas we're going to talk about. Those are the research that we're working in, and I'm going to talk about some activities within that area. So all of those things fall within our Center for Transportation Research. A wide range of tools built by the U.S. government to figure out how to evaluate these technologies and figure out how to put them on the road and make them a reality. So basic and applied combustion. We're talking about very advanced concepts. Combustion's still there. It's going to be there for a long time. It's going to continue to develop. It's going to continue to compete with a lot of these new technologies. Fuels research, once again. Biotechnology, biofuels are pushing new fuels, but all of that's going to be competing with existing fuels, existing gasoline, and existing diesel. Materials research, breakthroughs in magnetics, energy storage concepts and technologies and processes, all of that comes through the materials research area. Modeling and simulation, testing and validation, and finally vehicle systems. How we test these vehicles, how we pull them together and try to understand and compare the technologies so we actually understand how they work. So, talked earlier, yesterday, I think there was more discussion about this, but what are the actual goals of what we're working toward? So these are the hard goals. I mean, this presentation will be available afterwards, so you actually know what we're trying to do. Groups of experts from industry, universities, government got together and determined what are the strike points, what things do we need to have happen to actually have progress move forward. These are it. Advanced combustion. Really, how do we improve efficiency? What kind of fuel economy increases do we have to make? Fuel and lubricants, how does friction have to drop, spec piece by piece? Lightweighting, how far down does the weight have to go to actually be worthwhile? These are the targets we're working towards. So as you talk about these different technology areas for research, these are the targets that we're working toward, and these are the things we can expect to actually come, because as we've worked, we've steadily walked towards meeting these objectives. So let's talk about some initiatives. What's actually underway? Well, first of all, let's talk about EV everywhere. So electric vehicles. 10 years ago, a lot of us thought it was absolutely impossible for electric vehicles to really take off. There were really over-optimistic predictions made. But what's actually happened is there's been substantial success. It's shocked a lot of old-timers like me who thought that we would never really get anywhere with electric vehicles. The truth is, as of September, a month and a half ago, the 1 millionth electric vehicle, plug-in electric vehicle, was produced. Now, that's pretty amazing. It's not what we were hoping for. It's not what we were dreaming for, but it's a whole lot more than a lot of us were hoping for. 1 million vehicles. That includes over 300,000 in the United States, another 100,000 in China, and 100,000 in Japan, and about 250,000 in Europe. Real numbers, real vehicles on the road. So we talk about a lot of virtual products that may be appearing in the future. These are here right now. And the growth, let's look at the growth. It's disappointing. Well, there was an initial takeoff, substantial amounts of vehicles being produced. It's really leveled out. And I think that's what drives the EV Everywhere, Electric Vehicle Everywhere initiative. Here are the vehicles. Here are the sales in the U.S. Good, not great. I mean, you could see up until about a year and a half ago when the fuel prices dropped, the vehicles were taking off at an almost exponential rate. Now they've leveled off. There are a lot of products in the field. There are still a lot of concerns. Costs are way too high. A lot of problems that are still being addressed. So EV Everywhere is really focused on trying to address those problems and overcome it. Now why? Why do they care? Well, because the more analysis we do, the more it becomes clear that plug-in electric vehicle emissions substantially improve our carbon emissions compared to conventional technologies. So those projects, and I won't go into too much into detail, are going to continue to focus on better batteries, better charging, better grids, more efficient lightweight structures and lightweight technologies. In some ways, old-fashioned ways of improving the technology, but really fundamentally important. And it's really, as we measure it, it's really significant. The carbon emissions from plug-in electric vehicles, taking everything into account, and once again, this is analysis done by people who really don't care what the answer is, shows that it's about half of potential improvements to conventional vehicles. That's a substantial improvement that we can't ignore, we have to look at. That said, we're not walking away from conventional technologies either. Powertrain efficiency has improved more than 10% in the last 8 years. That's dramatic. That's better than my bank account did. That's 1 and some percent per year. And it's spread evenly across the distribution of vehicles. Cars in particular had almost a 13% improvement. Now that's something not to be ignored, because as we continue to improve at 1% per year, that says that technology is going to continue to be important. So Department of Energy is still going to be funding work in this area to compete with electric vehicles. The target's moving. The program in this area is called Optima, co-optimizations of fuels and engines. For sake of time, I'll go quickly through it, but it's about designing fuels and engines for each other. So in the past, we designed engines, we had fuels, we let the two of them somehow wander together. This time we're going to step back and take a long-term look, a 10-year look, and design the fuels for the engines and design the engines for the fuels to allow downsizing, to allow more efficiency, and to really allow us to tailor-make what kind of emissions we want to see and what kind of power outputs we're going to need at the same time. So combustion work is going to continue. Next, intelligent transportation. Now, this has been so well covered today. I actually went through last night and took almost all the slides I was going to talk about because it's really well covered. But suffice it to say, traffic increases are substantial. You look at the growth curve, you look at that red curve to the right on each of those bars within many different types of city sizes and population groups. Traffic congestion is growing steadily year by year. It's become a real problem in a lot of places, and it's not going to go away. We do think that, that connected and automated vehicles will do a lot to take care of that. One bit of warning, though, as someone who's worked in the American system for a very long time, never underestimate the power of the American legal system to stop any innovation. That's something I know all of you, especially you who work for OEMs, are more than well aware of. So as clever as our startups are, there are equally clever lawyers looking at ways to figure out how to make money on what you're trying to do. So transportation is a system. Now, Department of Transportation really has the focus on making this work, and a lot of small companies and big companies are going to make it happen, but our job is to figure out how do we get energy efficiency out of connected and automated vehicles. I think it's going to be substantial. I think there are a lot of places where we can go and a lot of advantages we can find from looking at connected and automated vehicles. So fueling infrastructure, urban science, behavior science, systems of systems. This is all the analysis that we're doing right now to see where this is going to go. And I think this is going to help lead one portion of connected and automated vehicles. And ultimately, when they're put together, there will be a probably large Department of Energy initiative to confirm and help develop that technology at the same time. So final thing I want to talk about is the grid. The grid is the enabler for the electric vehicle in many different ways. And in many ways, it's something that benefits from electric vehicles and actually will benefit electric vehicles. But society as a whole has broadly benefited from the work that we're doing on the back of electric vehicles to modernize our grid. Now, grid modernization initiative, there are a lot of customers and a lot of people who are happy about this. And this is a major effort from Department of Energy right now. It's a cross-cutting effort to build on really a range of different things that will generate revenue and cut costs for society while implementing electric vehicles at the same time. 10% reduction in societal costs from power outages, 33% decrease in the cost of reserve margins while maintaining reliability, and a 50% cut in the cost of wind and solar and other distributed generation integration. So there's substantial benefits to that. One estimate is $7 billion annually can be saved in the U.S. economy just by updating the grid using electric vehicles as the example. So this is an area that we're focusing on substantially, and there's already been a lot of success. Plug-in vehicle emission studies have indicated that new power generation facilities will improve carbon emissions substantially. If you look on the right-hand side, you'll see the retirements of power plants in the United States. Very large, dirty coal power plants are being eliminated right now as part of this grid initiative. On the left-hand side, you can see scattered across the country really new, cleaner technologies, renewables, natural gas, and a range of different types of clean technologies that are coming online as part of the grid modernization. And grid emissions results are actually quite positive. The U.S. power sector, CO2 emissions reached a 27-year low in April. That's an amazing improvement. And a lot of it's driven by the fact that we're investing in the grid for a lot of reasons, but partly because of electric vehicles. So let me conclude quickly. Energy. Gas prices are low in the U.S., and production continues to increase. But that's just a short snapshot. It's going to change. That production of oil will peak with lower prices and won't tick back up again until we're once again in trouble. So this is just a short breathing space we've grabbed. We need to use that breathing space. Automotive, plug-in electric vehicle sales have slowed, but the benefits of them individually have grown. So the government is really doubling down on its effort. It wants to make sure that we bring those things online because we see the benefits more and more. Environmentally, the cleaner grid increasingly benefits the sales of plug-in electric vehicles. And I mentioned Jevons paradox at the start of this. And that's the idea that as we have cheaper, more available energy, we're just going to waste it. Unfortunately, that seems to often be the case. So let me look at this, show you this as a final chart. Consumer preferences. Customer preferences are shifting once again away from fuel economy. You look at the bottom of that chart, June 2015. Fuel economy, which for the last 10 years has been one of the major concerns of consumers. The data we're collecting through Department of Energy indicates the U.S. population is shifting away from that. Only 13% of people thought fuel economy was really significant with their next car purchase. Instead, they were more interested in dependability, low price, quality of the vehicle, but fuel economy was very low on their list. So what does that mean? Well, people might not be willing to put themselves out with technologies that really aren't as convenient or aren't as expensive as they want them to be. So Jevons Principle says that we may potentially be going backwards as we improve society more and more. You've been a very kind audience. I'm sorry for going so long, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Thank you.